My business model is about buying 3.5 metres of fabric instead of 300 metres of fabric. Hi, I'm Godwin Hili.
He is the founder and creative director of Godwin Charli and the designer behind Mates Measure Fashion, a brand that offers bespoke fashion for men, women, and children.
If I found what I'm passionate about, the financial gains will come, I'll always live a happy life, and it'll never feel like work. Invest in your people and to invest in your team to enable you to reach your goals a lot quicker. I wanted my brand to speak loudly about where I've come from and what my key influences are bringing me to this point today. I think one of the key learnings was to not be afraid, to dive right in and believe in yourself. It's about creating a brand and an experience in here that excites people every day. I had imposter syndrome. I had to prove not only to myself but to my customers, to my audience, that I deserved to be where I was. My customers seek me out for those experiences. They want pieces that not only elevate them as individuals, but they feel proud of hanging in their wardrobe. Fall forward, learn from our experiences, from our failures, and to continue moving forward.
Where big dreams meet bold action. Where we share real stories, actionable insights, and the inspiration needed to transform your ideas into businesses. Are you ready to turn your ideas into success and be an inspiration to others? Join Inspirepreneur.
Hi, I'm Godwin Hili, founder and creative director of Godwin Charli, designer of Mates Measure Fashion for men, women, and children. I loved my childhood. You know, I'm fortunate that I have two incredible parents that allowed us to express ourselves freely. They never forced us to be anyone, but encouraged us to be true to who we are and to explore our natural gifts. It's funny, my sisters and I have all studied business degrees, specialising in commerce and accounting, but we've all gone off and created creative businesses. So I'm in fashion and they're in the performing arts. So it's a testament to my mum and dad that always supported us and encouraged us to just be happy and like I said, explore and lean into our gifts. So growing up, mum being a dressmaker, she made us everything we wore. Up until about the age of 15, I was still wearing pieces that she was making for me. Part of that had to do with, you know, 3 young children, wanting to save a little bit of money. But my earliest memory for me is walking into a Spotlight or Lincraft store with my mother and choosing a piece of fabric or fabrics to create either my birthday outfit for my 6th birthday. I remember choosing a matching singlet and shorts set for my 6th birthday. So even at that age, we had an influence on how we looked. And mum just brought everything to life. So that would be my earliest memory of what shaped me to be the man I am today. I always knew growing up as a child that I enjoyed a variety of things. I loved my sport, I loved music, I loved creating almost community. You know, I love roles of leadership. So heading into university, I was still quite vague as to how I wanted to specialise. And it wasn't until my sisters had the idea to start a performing arts school that I felt like a creative career was my calling. So when I got involved with them to establish this school, very quickly I learnt that everything involved in running a business, creating a community, creating a brand, employing the very best, not only in people and service, but all aspects of business, being a premium service, was something I really enjoyed. And also our end-of-year productions, being involved in the creative execution of that, I really, really enjoyed. So for me, it was about finding something that enabled me to live out my passion, and here I am. You know, it was about really listening to those around me in terms of how they perceived me, how they perceived what I did on a regular basis, and me listening to what brings me into my flow. You know, I've always been the type in my early 20s, I always said to myself, if I found what I'm passionate about, the financial gains will come, I'll always live a happy life, and it'll never feel like work. And that was just something that was always in my head from a very, very early age. And once I realised that people valued my opinion when it came to styling and dressing and what to buy and what not to wear, once I realised that I could create real change, then I started to really lean into the fact that the world of styling and fashion was my calling. I've always had expensive taste. I always like the most expensive piece of furniture, the most expensive fabric. It's just inbuilt. I've always been that way when given the option. So for me, it was very easy to establish a brand and a business that spoke to these values, I guess. Now, from day one, upon opening my first store, we purposely aligned the business in a premium sector of Melbourne. So we wanted to align ourselves with the very best in the market. Believing that we had a great product, we felt like we could sit alongside the very best in the market. So from day one, I was rubbing shoulders at the very best brands, and I guess when you throw yourself into that environment, you naturally just level up and you become a great brand. And I've always been about alignment, whether it be collaborations. I'm always very, very choosy and very, very selective around who I partner with, and who I want to collaborate with. I think that's critical to ensuring that my brand upholds that premium feel. So after my first year in business, not only was I shoulder to shoulder with the very best fashion brands in Melbourne, I also signed a very corporate contract with the Geelong Cats in the AFL, and I became the official style partner or the official outfitter for the #1 sporting club in the country. So that put me on a pedestal. It made me, I guess it put me on the map in terms of other brands and other sporting organisations that wanted to be part of something great. And it was the philosophy of the Geelong Cats at the time that they wanted to go from good to great. They had won a premiership, and it was about taking the next step and about levelling up not only on the ground, on the field, but off the field. And they felt like I could bring that from a club uniform point of view. Having studied marketing and advertising during my university years, I always knew that a great brand needs to have a great story, and it needs to feel authentic. So for me, not having any formal fashion schooling, I wanted my brand to speak loudly about where I've come from and what my key influences are bringing me to this point today. So Godwin representing obviously me, being a unique name, I thought it would have cut through in the marketplace. And Charli represents both my father's name Charles and is spelt like the female of the brand, representing mum's influence. So my father's old wardrobe, his 60s and 70s wardrobe that he kept and held on to, became part of my earliest fashion exploration. I would take some of his old pieces, trousers, jackets, and I would have my mother alter them to fit me the way I wanted them to feel and look and feel. So for me, the Charli is symbolic of my parents and their strong influence on how I came about becoming the fashion brand I am today. So I was fortunate in 2005 to take up a volunteer role as the assistant to the creative director of Melbourne Fashion Festival. Back then it was L'Oreal Melbourne Fashion Festival, Robert Buckingham. And I basically spent a week shadowing him at all rehearsals, all formal engagements, all runway shows, backstage, front of house, the whole industry I absorbed and was surrounded by in these 7 days. And it just lit a spark inside of me, and I thought, wow, maybe I am meant to be in this space, in this industry. So I feel like that was the spark that really sent a lightning bolt through me to say, I find this industry exciting. Let's lean in a little bit more and see what comes of it. I was actually quite proud of myself during that week. This guy was quite a big deal, and he just threw me in the deep end, and I just had to swim. So I think one of the key learnings was to not be afraid, to dive right in and believe in yourself. You know, he allowed me to be quite autonomous in my role, and he barely knew me. I think he just had a good gut feel about what I could do. So I think now as a leader, employing those, I guess, leadership skills with my staff to allow them to spread their wings is something that I want to be and want to do regularly so that I can get the best out of them. I guess it was my entrepreneurial spirit that allowed me to take that jump, that leap of faith, and support Robert at the time. I was finishing off my marketing degree. I was about to embark on a 4-month European adventure holiday as a bit of a gap between starting my advertising job at the time. So I think I'm a really good example of what can be when you believe in yourself. One of my greatest fears at the time of establishing Godwin Charli was I had imposter syndrome. Like, I came from the school of thought that you needed to go to university, get that piece of paper, and then you could be accepted in your profession. But I had that, but not in my industry. So for me, it was almost like starting from scratch. And I had to prove not only to myself, but to my customers, to my audience, that I deserved to be where I was. I was fortunate that I had the backing of quite a prominent wholesale manufacturer. So I knew that my product was rock solid. And it was just a matter of believing that I had great product, believing that I could serve my customers as naturally as I had my family and friends, and do it from a really genuine point of view. You know, I didn't come from any formal retail background either. So I had no influences on selling. For me, it was about just being honest and authentic, and my customers really resonated with that, and I think that's what came natural. The fashion game was a lot slower prior to social media. So by that I mean I could travel abroad in February, in Europeans' winter. I could attend a fabric fair in Paris or Milan, and I could make decisions on fabric for our summer. So we're in February, I'm now buying fabric for January, February, March, April of the following year. I could confidently come back to Australia, design my pieces, put them into production, receive the inventory, and then actively sell it through my stores. These days, if I allow that amount of lead time, my stock would almost fall out of trend, would almost not be relevant. So, post social media, or in the age of social media, we now have to be a lot nimble as fashion businesses. I was making a lot of my product early on in Australia, so I could adopt a Zara methodology of going from, as long as I had the fabric, I could go from concept to my stores in about 8 weeks, which was really fast. Sometimes 4 weeks, depending on how quickly I could pay my suppliers. But if I was to have it made offshore, those lead times would expand to, you've got 3.5 months for fabric, another couple months to 3 months of manufacturing, get it on a ship, that's another month. We're talking 7 to 8 months, 9 months before I could receive the goods. Now as a made-to-measure business, I can turn around my concepts within 3 to 4 weeks. And I can literally take one of my designs, one of my ideas, one of my observations from concept to my showroom, literally within 3 to 4 weeks. And that includes what a customer may want. So I've established this showroom to inspire my customer, not necessarily to be the only concept that they can, I guess, purchase or order. They can see one of my designs and reinterpret it with a fabric of their choice. And that can happen within 4 weeks. I feel like social media has really accelerated the needs of our clients. They're seeing things today and they want them now. And a lot of fast fashion brands out there, although on the cheaper end of the scale, can provide that satisfaction, that immediate satisfaction straight away for a lot of customers. However, the space I play in is what we would refer to as, quiet luxury. So they're garments that have a very classic appeal, no time frame associated with the look and feel, unless you're looking for a particular colour or a colour of the season. A lot of what I do is timeless and classic. One thing that I've really, over the past sort of probably 5 years, really enjoyed is giving back to my industry. And by that I mean educating students that are coming through either the fashion or the style ranks, and really teaching them the basics, the fundamentals when it comes to tailoring. So the backbone of what I do stems from tailoring. It's a structured garment, and although the market these days and my consumer has become a lot more relaxed in terms of what they choose to wear, the fundamentals are there in terms of tailoring. So my heritage, being influenced and taught by master tailors, has always been about respecting the cloth, respecting the artisan nature of what we do. So giving back in terms of speaking with students. There's one association I work with called the Australian Style Institute. And I just love standing up there 4 or 5 times a year and really teaching these up and coming stylists what it takes to be a great stylist in my world. And a lot of the time they'll handball that responsibility to me. So they'll bring their clients to me, they'll know of my expertise, and then hand over the reins and the customer to ensure that they get a premium, fully experienced service. So, what I do, I'm constantly learning every day. So I can't expect even my staff to have all the experience that I've had. But if you always come at it with an open mind and an appreciation for always be learning, then I think you can only just get better and better and better at this craft. So I always view the first 10 years of my business as my apprenticeship. I feel like it was the ultimate MBA. And for those that don't know much about my story, I had to wind up my business in 2017. So after 10 years of growing, expanding, I opened about 8 stores across that period of time, I realized that the business model that we were striving for and looking to master wasn't the way. And it needed to change. And with that came the need to wind down the business. as severe as that sounds, it was my greatest education. It taught me the most. To hit rock bottom like I did, both financially, mentally, the skills required to dig myself out of that hole has made me the man I am today. But it has also attracted the business model that I now love and am so passionate about today. I had always offered made to measure as part of my service, but as my original business grew, the skills required to administer made to measure was just too difficult. So the focus was on ready to wear. So rolling out stores, spending a lot of money on fit outs, leases, staff and products, and getting my staff to sell the designs, the inventory that we were creating. In hindsight, it was the wrong direction. There were businesses in my industry that were moving towards made to measure and solely focusing on made to measure. And although a third of my business was made to measure, it wasn't a focus. And now, with the, iteration 2 of Godwin Charli, 95% of what I do is made to measure. And the learnings that have come from that are quite simple from a business point of view. The fact that I can customize the experience entirely for my customer is super powerful. You know, my customer no longer has to compromise on fit. My customer no longer has to compromise on fabric. My customer can choose, if I was to use a car analogy, they can choose the Kia model, or they can choose the Lamborghini, or the Ferrari, or the Bentley. And what I've found now, since the relaunch in 2019, my customer has grown with me. And they have demanded that I also level up. So I now have a client base that demands the best. So I now work and surround myself with the very best fabric mills in the world in order to give my customers that very pure thing. And that's a premium product, but wrapped around a premium service. Yeah, so I was very fortunate within my first 10 years of business. I quickly realized that in order to be one step ahead of my competitors, I had to travel. So every year, at a very minimum, I was in Paris, Milan, and England, and London, to gain inspiration, to meet with suppliers, and to attend the very best fabric fairs the world can offer. So I built relationships over many years with the best mills, and that has only snowballed. Now in year 19, my ability to connect and to source and to find the very best mills is something I'm very passionate about. And I'd like to view myself as a fabric aficionado. Like I love fabric. It's what attracted me to this industry from the very, very beginning. Part of my story that I haven't elaborated on is my time at PwC as a trainee accountant. I was 19 and I met on one of my jobs the son of a tailor. He was one of my colleagues in my office, and he basically had a father who ran a wholesale manufacturing facility up the road here in Collingwood. And we became very good friends, and before I knew it, I was starting to get my own garments made at this factory. And it was the process of discovering old bolts of fabric, literally blowing the dust off these beautiful tweeds, English tweeds and cashmeres that were basically left there and no longer, they were basically disregarded. They may have been off an old order, a customer could no longer pay the bill, so that fabric was just sitting there. I loved reinterpreting those fabrics into trousers, jackets, and making them my own. And that just became fun. That's what I loved doing. So once I realized I could do that more regularly, I then realized that I could potentially do this for others. And when my good friend at the time, Pete, took over his father's business and decided to focus more on retail rather than wholesale, it was my opportunity to step up, and with his guidance and with his support and with the support of his family, they wrapped their arms around me and basically guided me, taught me everything I knew. And I'm very grateful for those years. It was a very, very beautiful time of my career, those early years. So for me, it was about taking all of that experience and, becoming the atelier that I am today. So part of my time abroad, sourcing fabrics, getting inspired, was about not only attending the fairs, but attending the mills themselves. And there's a part of Italy, north of Italy, that I get a lot of my fabrics from, and that's known as Biella. And in Biella, the mills that surround themselves at the base of the Alps claim to have the best quality product, because the natural, water that runs off these mountains is what they use to wash the raw materials. And they believe that it's the purity of that water that gives the fabric the handle, that very, very special handle that only the Italians can replicate. So, and these are the things that I just love and adore about what I do, that every piece that I design, every mill that I source has a story, which is why, for me, the brand Godwin Charli is such a story, because it's a true story, it's an authentic story. And I enjoy sharing that with my clients all the time. So I guess these days, the word hustle is used a lot. And it was something that I naturally did. For me, starting a business was a one-way ticket out of the corporate world. So I knew, having spent time in accounting, having spent time in marketing roles and advertising, I knew that I didn't want a 9-to-5 corporate job. So for me, starting my business was a one-way ticket out. And I was going to do everything I could to never go back. So the hustle has always been real for me, I would say that, the toughest thing I've had to endure was struggling financially. So being under pressure from a cash flow point of view. When I once upon a time had 6 stores, 25 staff, supplier invoices piling up, and the economy not behaving itself. My industry taking this really strong stance towards always being on sale. My margins were just stripped, and that was stressful. The hustle wasn't fun in those days, So I think now my business model enables me to be more cash flow positive. It enables me to wake up every day and do what I do with joy, not worrying about, can I pay my next bill? So I guess my advice to the youth of today who are striving to be entrepreneurs, who are looking to have that little side hustle or to make hustle a lifestyle, I'd be very clear on the business model that you're looking to work with, because there's nothing fun about hustling and not making any money. For 10 years, I hustled. I opened stores, I paid wages, I bought beautiful stock, but I never fed I felt like I never fed myself. I paid myself a very basic wage, and I felt like the rewards never came from a financial point of view, because I never made it a focus. So I think my advice would be to have a balance. I was all about brand and making my business the best it could be from an experience point of view, whether that be my shop fit outs, employing the best staff and paying the best money, buying the best fabrics at the highest price. But when it came to what keeps us alive, the financial side of things I lost sight of. And I relied on too many people around me to make critical decisions that in the end, I believe, were the cause of my downfall. You know, I had the responsibility as a business owner to oversee all of this, and I was brought into meetings at a very high level, but I never took the time to invest in really understanding the numbers. I trusted too many other people to make those decisions. So that's why I say those first 10 years for me were my apprenticeship and the ultimate MBA. So if we're still on the topic of hustling, I relaunched my business just before COVID. About 2 months before COVID, I jumped on the business full time, having launched it in a part-time capacity, signed a lease, and then we were shut down. And my business, my new business model, relies on you coming into me and being measured in person. How on earth was I going to run my business now when the city had been abandoned, everyone was working from home, and you couldn't physically come and see me? It was scary for about 24 hours. And had I not experienced the lows of the 10 years prior, I wouldn't have had the resilience and I wouldn't have had the hardened skin to say, well, hold on a minute. Take a step back. Let's not react and become emotional. Let's look at how we can, I guess, reposition the business in the short term or medium term. I mean, we didn't know at that stage what it was going to look like. But for me, I had to maintain the conversation digitally, and I had to learn how to conduct virtual fittings. So throughout COVID, customers were at home. They were still seeing me post on social. They were still seeing my website being updated. And they still wanted to buy. So for me, it was about learning this new form of communication, which was Zoom or Google Meets, and connecting with my client through a monitor. So I taught myself how to conduct fittings virtually, which now proves to be a godsend because I now have clients all over the world. In particular, when it comes to weddings, and groomsmen are scattered in all corners of the world, coming together for a wedding in a particular location. I can now do physical fittings with those in Melbourne or those travelling from interstate. And for those based in Paris, in London, in Qatar, I have customers in Saudi, I have customers in New Zealand, and this is all because I taught myself how to conduct my business virtually and not having the fear to step into that space. So COVID for me, although it was initially quite scary, ended up being the springboard to then finding this beautiful location, having the opportunity to now be amongst the very best luxury brands in the world, and offering my clients the very best experience here in my Melbourne showroom. So I think the fact that I design everything here in Melbourne and I use the very best fabrics from Europe allows me to compete with these very enormous brands that surround me here on Flinders Lane and Collins Street. I have so much belief in what I do from a technical point of view. I know what my customers want, and I source from the very best mills in the world. So when you put all that together, I feel like it's the ultimate ingredient, or it's the ultimate recipe to produce the very best business that I can in my industry here in Melbourne. And not only to those that live in Melbourne, but across the globe. And that's further validated by customers that come to me having shopped elsewhere and see and touch and feel what I do. Like, I deeply feel like I belong now, and with the support of my supply chain, which is world class, and the many mills that feed my business these incredible fabrics, why not stand proud here on Flinders Lane amongst the Chanels, the Louis Vuittons, the Guccis. I know Melbourne, I know Australia. I've been doing this for now 20 years, and it's time to believe. When I relaunched the brand in 2019, the greatest change was the fact that I no longer had to buy so far in advance in terms of the raw material and investing in the production time. So I gained my ability to be nimble and cater to my customers' needs very quickly. Became a very, very powerful weapon for me. So I feel like my supply chain has been supercharged. So I feel like waiting 4 to 5 weeks for a custom garment is incredibly, it's such an incredible experience for my clients. So I feel like that's the most powerful aspect of what I do. It's that ability to be nimble, quick to market, and cater to my customers' needs of wanting things now or as soon as possible. So my clients value quality over quantity. And a lot of my customers have told me over the years that a flaw in my business model is that my garments last too long. So, and that's because I take such care in the quality of my fabrications. I take such care in the make of my garments. So customers end up collecting my pieces rather than wearing out my pieces. So when it comes to fast fashion versus what I do, I feel like I fall into a category which the industry refers to as quiet luxury or sustainable fashion. They're pieces that we create that are meant to last a lifetime. And if not a lifetime, a good chunk of time. If they're looked after, if they're laundered correctly. And I feel like that's my lane, and that's the lane I now stick in. And my customers seek me out for those experiences. They want pieces that not only elevate them as individuals, but they feel proud of hanging in their wardrobe and wearing every day. A big part of what I do in this industry is guided by key influential individuals, and we refer to them as celebrities. There's no hiding from the fact that we watch TV, we watch movies, we read magazines, we scroll on our phones. We're constantly being fed images. And a lot of the time, the people we follow are influential. They may not be movie stars, but they may be champions of their industry. We look at all aspects about them that makes them successful. And a large part of what makes people successful and what people look at is what they wear. We look at what people wear, especially those that are successful, and we want to emulate all aspects of what they do. So a lot of the time, customers will come to me with images on their phone. They'll come to me with the idea of something they've seen in a movie, and I will try and bring that to life. A lot of the time I'm aware of the reference, but sometimes I'm not. So I am aware of the celebrity factor, but I'm also aware of key people of influence. So people that are really successful in their industry, people wanting to level up and become that person. A lot of the time it starts with what they wear and how they look. Probably one of the most famous clients I've had over the years has been Sir Richard Branson. And he was a keynote speaker at an event here in Melbourne. I was connected to him, and I basically, without dealing with him too much, had to create a piece. In this case, it was a jacket that he would wear on stage to present to a larger audience. And it was really about understanding who he was as best I could, without spending a lot of time with him, and taking measurements that were given to me at the time with very little insight, and creating a piece that he ended up wearing. So for me, that's one of the most famous individuals I've created a piece for. When it comes to areas of passion, I love the sporting arena. I grew up playing a lot of basketball, so being able to dress elite athletes is a passion of mine, in particular NBA players, Australian NBA-based NBA players that needed to look good off the court. So, Matthew Dellavedova, Andrew Bogut, some big Aussies at the time. Andrew was playing for Golden State, so Steph Curry came off winning a championship. Dally was playing with LeBron James in Cleveland. So being able to be amongst these guys at the peak of their powers was incredible. I had the opportunity to be involved with our national tennis organisation, our Fed Cup and Davis Cup teams, so the very best tennis players on the male and female sides. So being amongst them, measuring them, getting in amongst the banter was so enjoyable. And I guess the many AFL clubs that I've been the official style partner of and official outfitter of, these elite sportsmen, a lot is said and done behind the scenes, and I've really enjoyed those processes, bringing those clubs, those elite clubs to life. So probably one of the most memorable compliments I've ever received was very early on, when I'd opened my first little store on Little Collins Street here in Melbourne. Everyone thought that I was part of an international brand, that I was from overseas, that I'd been established for years. And the truth was, it wasn't. I had just created a brand that looked and felt international. It clearly had the quality hanging on the rack. And I'd like to think that my approach to serving the client in store made them feel like I was part of something bigger. So I think that was the greatest compliment early on, to be considered an international brand. The best advice that I've probably received over the course of the past 19 years, I mean, there's been a fair bit of that, but one that stands out for me is to invest in your people and to invest in your team to enable you to reach your goals a lot quicker. So instead of hustling and grinding it out to get from point A to point B, or to get from point A to point D, employ the right people to help you get there a lot sooner. And the cost, the opportunity cost here is that investment early on to help you learn and to help you get to where you want to be a lot sooner. Because I've learnt that if you hustle and hustle and hustle, you eventually burn out. And your reason for being becomes very cloudy, and that shine starts to rub off. So for me, it's about investing in the right people, having the vision, investing in the right people to help you get to where you want to be a lot quicker. So for me, being a sustainable business ticks many boxes. It's not only good for the environment, first and foremost, it's a smart way of doing business. So, as I've mentioned, my business model is about buying 3.5 meters of fabric instead of 300 meters of fabric. So in terms of waste, there is none. So my customer places an order for something they want, and I make them that garment that they will then use and hopefully love and cherish for many years to come. So to me, that's a sustainable business model. Has it become my mission? Absolutely. Was it a smart business model to focus on? Absolutely. So I think over time, I've learnt the importance of what I do and how I do it, and I'm leaning in to this space even more and more these days. You know, I now offer custom knitwear, I offer custom footwear. All of my smart casual jacketing and outerwear is all customizable, is all made to measure. Zero waste, only buying what I need to make that garment. It just makes too much sense. For me now, being 44, I've learnt that I've got to stick to my lane. And by that I mean that in order for my brand to own its own identity, I need to be known for something. And I need to stay true to my aesthetic and believe that my customers will seek me out for the things that I love. So I think for me, chasing fads can get very tiring. And in this day and age with social media, you can be producing new garments every day. But I think my customers come to me for garments that are classic and timeless, not necessarily to make a fashion statement. So I now truly wrap my business around that concept of creating these pieces that are made to be cherished, I guess, not to be thrown out after a few wears. I love designing women's outerwear. I love making women incredibly happy around wintertime. You know, it's one of those things that, although I have such a strong following in menswear, when it comes to my women's tailoring, I feel like there aren't that many brands that do it as well as this. That may sound a bit boastful, but I truly believe that, you know, and especially when it comes to winter, that structured, tailored garment, beautiful full-length coats. It's like just a gorgeous, luxurious hug come winter time for my female customers. So I get a lot of excitement from welcoming my female customers into my showroom and showing off all my incredible pieces that I know they're going to fall in love with. In terms of my favourite fabric that I love to use and source, it would have to be the many fabrics and varieties I source out of Italy. You know, the passion that these mills exude when you visit their facilities, the language, the influence, the feel, like I just connect so much with the way they do business. So for me, you know, I just love my Italian suppliers. So these days I realised that my industry is very, very busy when it comes to so many brands. It's cluttered with offerings for my potential clients. So in order for me to stand out, I needed my brand to stand for something. And I may know the story, my loyal customers may know the story, my staff may know the story, but social media is enabling me to tell my story. So I've started creating content about me personally, what motivates me, what inspires me, and hopefully when potential clients and existing clients get to know me better, they then fall in love with my brand, for it's my brand that embodies all that I am, if that makes sense. So, and it's those points of difference, it's what makes me unique and special, that I hope customers will fall in love with. When it comes to my greatest achievements, the fact that I get to stand here on Flinders Lane looking into mega global brands like Chanel across the road, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, to be able to stand amongst them and be proud of what I do in a beautiful space like this, I feel like is a huge achievement. And there's not a day that goes past that I don't, you know, flick off the lights when I'm the last one to leave and just take a deep breath in here and realise how lucky I am and how special I am. This experience has been for me, and where I've ended up. And I know it's not by fluke. I know it's by a lot of hard work and belief. But I'm just so grateful for all that I have now, and this business continues to grow and provide for not only myself and my family, but also for the staff I employ, and just makes so many people so happy on a daily basis. So they're the things that I value the most. I've always, well, one thing that was told to me by a mentor was to fall forward, right? So by that, she meant to learn from our experiences, from our failures, and to continue moving forward, continuously be learning, always be learning. So I think for me it's about leaving your ego at the door and being open to always be learning. I used to think that, you know, the learning stopped when you left university, you know, but boy was I wrong. It's only just beginning. So, you know, in times of struggle, we need to take time to reflect and learn from our mistakes and to implement change quickly. So they're the things that I now value the most. Not every day is going to be perfect, but as long as we don't make the same mistake over and over again, then we're continuously moving and growing. So that would be the advice I would give anyone, to fall forward, you know, learn from our mistakes and to always be open to learning. My next 5-year plan, well, I believe now, as opposed to the previous business model, my dream is to make this location here an absolute mecca here in Melbourne. There is so much potential to unlock here. It's only just the beginning. It's about creating a brand and an experience in here that excites people every day, that excites my staff, continues to excite my staff, and to continue working with like-minded brands to create unique experiences. So I don't know what the future holds, but I'm open to explore opportunities, but I also know what's working and I'm going to double down on that. So the advice I would give the younger generation wanting to get into the fashion industry would be to persevere, to stay true to your style and aesthetic, to own your own voice, but to balance that with commercial realities. As hard as that is for someone that's creative, it's so important to skill yourself or upskill yourself in the area of basic business operation. You don't want to leave that up to someone else who isn't as passionate as you, who hasn't made the investment like you have, and by that I mean not just financial but time. You need to be able to stand back and be almost, you know, objective in your approach. And that can be tricky for someone that's passionate and creative. But to forget the commercial reality of our industry and what makes it tick, you'd be stupid to ignore it. So having that balance would be the advice I would give anyone looking to pursue a career in fashion. So for those wanting to experience what I do and even to come and have a look at what I do, you can contact me via my website, godwincharli.com. That's Charlie with an I. You can find me on socials at Godwin Charli. That's Charlie with an I.